As this new year gets going, we'll be watching the rollout of new issues and policies as new leaders take charge. In Missouri, there's now a new administration running the state, and the man leading it has plans for his time on the job. Republican Mike Kehoe took the oath of office this past week, officially becoming Missouri's 58th governor. In a brief speech, he told the crowd he's ready to hit the ground running, and he's open to working toward a common goal.
This is my promise to you. I will talk to anyone, work with anyone, and root for anyone who has a good idea to make our state stronger and better. Missourians did not send us here to do what's comfortable. They expect results. They deserve results. And with my administration, they will get results.
Governor Kehoe pledged to get those results in a few key areas. He promised to work to lower taxes and cut regulations. And remember, he's told us before he wants to phase out the state income tax. The governor also vowed to strengthen public education while expanding school choice in the Show Me State. And he wants to tackle crime, beefing up police agencies, and taking a number of steps in an effort, he says, to make Missouri a place where it's easier to be a cop than a criminal. Part of Kehoe's Day One crime plan, he's been talking about for a while, included signing a handful of executive orders. And they do a number of things, including establishing full-time drug investigators within the State Highway Patrol, training officers to help federal ICE agents find undocumented immigrants, even directing law enforcement agencies to get information on someone's immigration status if they've been charged with a crime. We spoke with KC Mayor Quinton Lucas before the signings.
I think that he is somebody who is a straight shooter. We will share where we have disagreements, but I look forward to us working together. And frankly, the stakes are too high for us not to. We need a safer Kansas City. Kansas City is one of the greatest places to be in America, but we need to make sure that we become safer.
Mayor Lucas says collaboration on public safety is key, and that's especially important of note since the state controls the Kansas City Police Department. There's a lot to get to as the Kehoe administration gets started. Let's discuss with our roundtable of journalists. Please welcome back KMBC9 political reporter Michael Mahoney and Jason Hancock, editor-in-chief of the Missouri Independent. Thank you both for being here. Jason, we were wondering what the Day One crime plan entailed, and now we know.
Yeah, I mean, he's been saying that's his top priority since back before the primary. You know, he really does think that crime is an issue that resonates with voters and is affecting people's everyday lives. And so there's a lot of things that involve, beefing up law enforcement. He wants to increase pay, which is something that might have to, progress through the budget process. And, much like Kansas City, he wants to return St. Louis to state control. And he's got people in key spots in the legislature who agree with him, key committee chairs. So a lot of this stuff, especially in his first session when he's got the most political capital, it does seem like he's in a glide path to really try to get some of his priorities across the finish line.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, Jason, that you make, that he's not going to have any more political capital, unlikely, any time in his term than he is here in this first session with the legislature. And it's quite clear, like we've talked about for months now, that law enforcement and getting tough on crime are issues that Mike Kehoe talked about on the campaign ad nauseum and touched on it in his inaugural speech, and then fleshed it out on the very first day with his set of executive orders.
Now, Jason mentioned St. Louis, and we just heard from Kansas City Mayor Quinton Lucas. Do you think there'll be some pressure when it comes to policing on Kansas City as well?
Yeah, no doubt about it. Right now, the focus is over on the St. Louis side for a lot of reasons that detail with the local politics of St. Louis. But the issues remain in Kansas City about crime. While the homicide rate did drop last year, it's still over 100, and crime is going to be an issue for the administration at City Hall and obviously down in Jeff City.
Now, when he was a candidate, then, Lieutenant Governor Kehoe talked a lot about immigration, but stopped short of some of the more extreme proposals his Republican counterparts had pitched. Jason, what do you make of these new executive orders?
Well, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that they're trying to get things set up for if the federal government does take action, Missouri will be an active participant in going after undocumented immigrants. Attorney General Andrew Bailey was on hand for the executive order signings, and his office will have a key role in a lot of these things. So I think, Mike Kehoe is not someone that has, put forth a sort of draconian proposal for immigration enforcement, but it's clear that if the federal government is going to begin to step in and do more, which obviously incoming President Trump has said, Missouri is going to be a willing partner in that.
Interesting, Mahoney, how the governor says that the state wants to now help federal law enforcement.
Right, because there had been some discussion earlier about whether or not the state would help the feds on some federal policies like gun control, rather than immigration here. But as Jason said, the state of Missouri and the Keogh administration is teeing it up so that if there are going to be directives from Washington on illegal immigration, they're going to be right there. And as an evidence of that was the fact that Keogh didn't take many questions on the immigration policies that they talked about on Monday afternoon. He left a lot of those questions to the new Attorney General, or the current Attorney General, Andrew Bailey.
Yeah, good point. A minute left, gentlemen. We've swapped mics in Missouri, right? Mike Parson is now the former governor, Mike Kehoe the new one. Jason, any thoughts on the Parson legacy as the new administration takes over?
Well, Mike Parson obviously came in with a lot of, it was a difficult time. You know, Eric Greitens had that 18 tumultuous months left in scandal. Mike Parson came in and promised to kind of turn the page on that. In a lot of ways he did. But, you know, as he leaves office, a lot of folks are kind of looking at his 6 years and thinking more of as a caretaker administration, someone who really didn't get his hands dirty in a lot of politics, kind of let the legislature be in the driver's seat. I think Mike Kehoe is going to be a lot more hands-on. You kind of saw that. He's been making the rounds in the Capitol. You know, he was in the Senate not that long ago, was lieutenant governor presiding over the Senate. He's got a lot of relationships with these guys. I think it's going to be a very different stylistic administration under Mike Kehoe than Mike Parson. And we'll see if the results bear fruit.
Yeah, I think Jason's assessment of the legacy of the Mike Parson years is accurate, and I also think he's accurate when he says that the Kehoe administration may be more hands-on, especially when it comes to the legislature.
We'll see. Jason Hancock, thank you. Mahoney, stick around because we have a lot to talk about today.